what Jonathan Kuminga has been able to do in the absence of some of the players that have gotten hurt. Again, Jimmy Butler, Curry goes down, right? Kuminga's averaged 20, 25 points, and other NBA teams see that. They know it's high value, and I think the Warriors know it's high value too. I think they're looking to get some draft picks or another key player to help them build towards the future. But yeah, super interesting stuff. I think the Kuminga picture is like a lot deeper than people realize. The second apron is one of the most dangerous places you can be for a team that doesn't win in the playoffs. And so they're paying for this roster right now that gets it done in the regular season, which is bravo. Again, no slight to Cleveland's amazing season they had last year, but what does that really translate to?
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boys over here at 3-Man Weave. I'm your co-host CJ, here my lovely co-host ZD. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm in the building, bro. You know what I like to say. I'm above ground. We coming at you guys live. I think it's Saturday. It's July 5th. We doing it, man. We got some off-season things. Obviously, we got the off-season files, baby. We're going to talk about a crazy team, a team that should have, did a lot more in the Cleveland Cavaliers. But, yeah, bro, I'm doing good. Had a good day at work. Pretty solid. Tomorrow's my B-day, so,
yes, sir.
I'll slide into the 3-Man Weave, But, yeah, I'm feeling good, bro. How about you?
I'm doing well, bro. Yesterday was 4th of July, floated, had a good time with the boys, and, just was able to hang out with them. So anytime I'm able to do that, it's always a fun time. And, obviously now I'm shooting 3-man with the one and only, so can't complain, man.
Yes, sir.
Had a good day at work and just ready to get right into it, man. Super excited.
100p, bro. We were talking about it before, but, for the audience listening, it's just the consistency, man. Being intentionally consistent, having a purpose and doing things you can count on, bro. And I think this is one of those things for the both of us. So I'm very blessed and proud to do this with you, man. But,
Sir.
Bro, let's hop right into it, man. I think, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about Shea, but I know you're probably going to grill me about this LeBron stuff. So I'll just get right into that, man. I had some comments. Obviously, you guys probably have seen some rumblings, but there's been some potential trade talks with LeBron James. And to be honest with you, I was talking to CJ about this a little bit before we had started. But to be honest with you guys, man, I think this is a reality and it's feasible and it's possible. And I think we have to look at this from a wide-eye lens, right? We can't get tunnel visioned. And I think I talked to you about this before we hopped on, but the championship thing, I think we have to be realistic about where we are in the Western Conference. Denver's still there. Thunder's still there. Houston's still there. We're going to talk about them a little bit. But, bro, the Western Conference is Death Valley.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to get through all those teams. And I think the Lakers are really starting to ponder, what does this future look like without LeBron James? And, man, he's the king, bro. I love him, bro. Probably going to some questions, but just I think his play style over the last couple years has really changed. He's developed his shot. He's become, honestly, a much better playmaker as well. Just the more that he ages, the better that he becomes in that realm, bro. Just seeing the floor from a robotic type of standard is just, I think it's second to none. But ultimately, bro, he's a valuable player. And he's still got a lot of value, so we need to look into that value. And I think the Lakers are, there hasn't been any specific teams. I saw the Mavericks as like a troll thing on Twitter, but Rich Paul did mention that some teams had inquired about him, and from the Lakers' standpoint, I think this is a realistic place to be. I'm not too shocked about the rumors. If a team does want him, they'll be getting him on a year deal, that $52 million extension. So it's a rental. Not really sure if teams are interested in that. It definitely hurts his value a little bit, but I think I'll have you kind of talk to the viewers about what you think about his value, but I think he's still first round pick, decent player type of guy.
I agree.
If you can get somebody younger, that's definitely better, but I think teams are willing to give up more because they see the financial value as well. Having LeBron James in your building just ups the tickets by 200%. The jersey sales go up immediately. So having LeBron is more than a basketball investment. and I think that's clear to the people. But
Hmm.
yeah, man, we talked about it a little bit. I think it just makes me smile, bro, because we're starting to see LeBron James age like fine wine. I think he's had a great end of his career, bro. I'm not really surprised that the Lakers are looking into exploring options for him. Now have Luka Doncic, DeAndre Ayton, Austin Reeves, a younger core to start building around. To me, it makes perfect sense, and I'm happy that Pelinka. Obviously, it's no longer the Bus family. They sold to the Dodgers management. We
Hmm.
didn't talk a lot about that, but they're not now more of a financial powerhouse, right? You can assume that they now have a lot more money at their disposal, which going forward will be really good for contract negotiations. But anyway, um, yeah, to understand the type of value that LeBron James has brought into this building, I think is important. But you also have to figure out your next steps, and that's kind of what I've been talking about for the last few minutes. Is where can we go from here? We're not a finals contending team right now, and that's just the honest truth. Until I see some roster improvements, we had DFS walk too. Like we've gotten worse, to be honest, and I think the Lakers are kind of looking into the reality of the situation.
Hmm. Yeah, no, you said it perfect, bro. LeBron James is still a valuable asset in this league, no matter what his age is. Not even just for the basketball side, but more so for the business side as well. Like you said,
Exactly.
any team he goes to, their sales are gonna go up. People are gonna want to watch LeBron play basketball, regardless of where he's gonna be at. So I think we might have brought it up as well too. I think you asked me maybe like 2 podcasts ago, like what would you trade for LeBron, and I think I said that like maybe like for sure probably
Yeah,
1 first round pick and
you
then
did.
a younger asset or whatever, two and
Yeah.
two first round pick, whatever it may be. Just
Yep.
definitely a first round pick for sure. But yeah, it's bigger than basketball when it comes to LeBron. It's the business side as well, and I think a lot of people think about that, and that leads me into a question that kind of asking you. Obviously, you said the Mavs. You said who's the other team? Sorry, you just said that they're looking at Cleveland. Cleveland.
Yeah,
Where
Cleveland.
where do
Cleveland.
you think what would be a good spot for him to go right now in his career?
That's a really good question. It definitely has to be a contender.
Right.
Um, I think those two teams that you just brought up are one of the prime examples. I think, you know, I have to think about who can make the money work.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, because that's what it really is, right?
yeah, and for Braun, I don't see him going to a lot of like I don't see him going to like the Thunder or like selling out or doing anything like that. I see him going back to Cleveland or you know, um, I was thinking like San Antonio, bro.
Mm.
That's the other team that came to mind. Just because when I say San Antonio, I think that they're a piece like LeBron away
Right.
from contending for an NBA championship, and I think he sees the value that he could probably add to a market like San Antonio, and I think he would love to play with Wemby.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
that's probably my other thing. But yeah, Cleveland, probably Cleveland, San Antonio, bro, and they could definitely or um, I don't know, man. The Mavericks, I guess, but I can't see it either.
Yeah, I
It's
can't
kind of
see
like a
that.
powerhouse like Anthony Davis, Kyrie. So that's why I don't want to. I'm kind of reluctant to say that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
It's a
agree.
good question though.
Yeah, yeah. No, I just wanted to bring that up because that is in the talks. If y'all trade LeBron, kind of where would he end up going, and just kind of curious to see where you think he would be a good fit. Obviously, we gotta look at books and stuff to look at the finances because we gotta figure out where he would even be able to go for that case. But yeah, I was just curious. Wanted to see your thoughts on that.
Yeah, dude. I think the Lakers would ask for something crazy in return, like a flag and just like something unreachable.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Mavericks would bite because they haven't seen him play, but that's like the only possible scenario
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
think in my head. And LeBron's a very meticulous guy, and for people who don't know what that means, he likes to choose certain things. He likes to have things his way, and um, he's very pristine. He kind of knows what he wants to do, and I think he's one of the smartest players we've ever had, just on the court, but also off the court too.
Mm-hmm.
Giving him credit for that promise school and kind of what he's done in the community. But yeah, it's much bigger than basketball, bro. Way, way bigger, and I think if the audience doesn't understand the gravity of that, they're severely undertaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. 100%, bro.
Yeah. I just hope if he does get traded, we get maximum value, just
Mm-hmm.
because, I know he's been a long-term investment. You brought it up before we hit record, but that championship just forever reigns, and I think it's hard to see that walk out of the door. And the Lakers faithful, obviously I'm LA till I die, so for my Lakers fans, talking to you guys, we'll have to see what's next. I said that ago, but like CJ said, what are some of the teams that he can go to? Kind of just breaking down the situation from a wide-eyed lens,
Mm-hmm.
like I had mentioned earlier. And yeah, bro, I think it's definitely an interesting time to be a Lakers fan. I'm very proud that we have Luka Doncic and finally got a center who's competent. But I think Jackson Hayes has been great, by the way. But yeah, bro, I don't know. I hope LeBron is just happy to play for the Lakers right now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my head's at with that situation.
Yeah, hundred
Shout
percent.
out Rich Paul though and Clutch, man. They be getting guys their money.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yeah,
Facts.
kind of going to the next big news. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander just signed a contract extension, 4 year, $285 million. Well deserved. I mean, after this past season, I think it was really the right choice. I think he could have gotten a 5 year extension, but he did a 4. So my thoughts when I first saw that was, he's trying to save a little bit more cap room for, our younger guys, the J Dubs, the Chets, because they're going to be due for a contract. I think this upcoming, not next year, or not this upcoming season, the next year, the following.
Bro, I
So
thought we were gonna see that 3 number for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, me too. That's what I was expecting, but so I think it just, I think we talked about it as well. I think this team that we have and just kind of the way that they are, someone was gonna take a cut, like a pay cut, and the fact that it was our best player, the MVP, Finals MVP on our team, it just kind of goes to show kind of like the mentality. Obviously he was worth that 5 year extension, but thought about the team and thought about everyone else trying to, stay hopefully below that second apron luxury tax, which we'll kind of get into on our off-season files. But yeah, no, I think it was well deserved, bro. I'm just glad that we were able to, lock him up. It extended to 2030, 2031 NBA season. And I think that year he's going to be making 72 mil a year, I believe. So that's almost $1 million a game. And the cap is only going to get raised by then, so someone else is probably going to be a higher
Right.
contract but next year.
Broke
You
it.
know what I mean?
Yeah, you're
But
right.
no, man, I was just super excited, man, because I think he's the king of Oklahoma right now, bro. So it's dope that we were able to extend him and just kind of. He was already a focal point of a cornerstone of our franchise already, but the fact that we have solidified that he's going to be here for the foreseeable future, it just has me excited. Just what he was able to do
Yep.
this past season, and just with these younger guys getting their extensions up, it just kind of shows me that he was willing to take a little bit of a pay cut to try to help secure those guys as well. So that was kind of my initial thoughts, and he rightfully deserved this contract. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. I think he's been like a product of excellence for the last couple years, and I think this is kind of like a Jalen Brunson thing, bro.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of what it reminded me of, but just willing to take less money for future and seeing the bigger picture and all those things like that. But yeah, I think Shea obviously deserved more, but yeah, I think the Thunder are just in the best position possible. I don't want to go into too much depth about that because we need to save it for a little later. But
Right.
their balance sheet, like just the amount of draft picks they have, and now having Shea for 4 years, and most likely for his career, he's probably feeling very sentimental at this moment. And probably if you asked him, he doesn't really see how he would leave
Mm-hmm.
unless they traded him or something like that, which could happen.
Could
The
happen.
franchise, yeah, it could always happen. We're never gonna say never, but ultimately, yeah, this is just a testament to his excellence and kind of seeing the bigger picture and always being that guy. And yeah, bro, it just means J-Dub and Chet will get paid as well. Those are my notes. Just seeing those guys get their money will be good too. I know kind of it's a good day when everybody gets their money, bro. And I think that's that's like how the Thunder have always rolled, bro. Just high team spirit, very kindred, just very honest, bro. And every single one of those guys on that roster is a character, and they all contribute a lot of value to that team. So I think they had that in mind whenever they made this deal. Luxury tax for sure, just trying to stay under that 188 number for the first apron, but they're they have some things at their disposal right now that allows them to have so many assets, and like CJ is talking about and alluding to in a few years, and the reason I don't want to go into too much depth is because I don't want to spoil it, but they will have to pay and open their checkbook and eventually build through the draft again. I think that's what makes the Thunder so special in this case is you would think they would be screwed. They aren't.
Yeah.
Because they made really smart decisions a few years ago, and some of those teams are horrible and still paying for those mistakes, as they should. I think that's part of doing business, and unfortunately that means the rich get richer if you don't like that. But I think the Thunder have been poor, so don't forget that. I think we talk about the rich, the Celtics, the Lakers. I think, I'm speaking from firsthand experience, but the Thunder come from the mud. NBA champions. Shea comes from that place. Clearly, I think this is a signal to his value. And you didn't mention it, but you did, but it's just the fact that he's getting paid the most in the NBA kind of speaks to the type of player that he is. And I wouldn't be shocked if he wins another MVP next season. I really wouldn't, bro. Just kind of from what I've seen and where the roster's at, and we'll talk about it later, but just they're in prime position to repeat.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, man, it's exciting. So I can't lie. I'm as a Thunder fan, I have not been able to complain about a lot this whole season. So,
Oh, bro, you're like, yeah, you're peaches and cream as they like to say it, but dog, like I think like I just said it, y'all come from the mud. I know you don't forget the 40, 26 game win seasons and all these crazy like experiences, but it all leads to something, bro, and it led to that Larry O'Brien, like trophy. And so yeah, bro, shout out to the Thunder, man. Shout out to Shea doing that. I think that's a major props to the highest paid player in the NBA. So yeah, bro, I think that's good. But I want to speak about Jonathan Kuminga. Stay in the West. Been seeing some things about him, bro, and hey, I think it's good. I want to speak to the audience, the Warriors faithful, but to be honest with you guys, I think you guys should have been looking to trade Kuminga. It's good that you guys are trying to dodge just an expensive team now with Jimmy Butler in the fold. And, I think Jonathan Kuminga deserves a chance. That's what I'm here to talk about. We haven't seen him get the minutes and the opportunities that he deserves because of the way Steve Kerr coaches. Now, you may disagree or agree with the way that Steve Kerr does things. I personally disagree with some things, but I think the way that he runs the team can't be denied. Multi-time NBA champion, one of the best coaches, Hall of Fame coach, no doubt. But the rocky boat with Kuminga has killed their relationship, and I think this is where these trade talks stem from, is that relationship right there, and then what Jonathan Kuminga has been able to do in the absence of some of the players that have gotten hurt. Again, Jimmy Butler, Curry goes down, right? Kuminga's averaged 20, 25 points, and other NBA teams see that. They know it's high value, and I think the Warriors know it's high value too. I think they're looking to get some draft picks or another key player to help them build towards the future. But yeah, super interesting stuff. I think the Kuminga picture is like a lot deeper than people realize. Jonathan Kuminga is not going to make major news headlines, but he's been at the Warriors facility kind of waiting for opportunity that they just haven't given him. And I think this is a signal to starting to get that opportunity. And for me, that's really exciting for a couple reasons. But for the main reason is he's a really good player. I think he's one of the better forwards that we have in the league. He's kind of not on a leash, just a rebounding hybrid, super athletic guy. And if he can get a consistent 3-point shot, I think he's a easily, I would say he's going to average over 20 points. So I think Jonathan Kuminga's a scary guy. But yeah, bro, I think a couple teams are interested. I don't have the list in front of me at the moment, but I think like the Kings, a few other teams, but super interested, bro. I think, yeah, I think Kuminga's been kind of at the Warriors' defense for a long time, and I think he's finally starting to hop over that and realize that he has more leverage than what was originally planned. And let's not forget, he's an NBA champion. I think a lot of teams like that. He won it. I think he's one of the youngest NBA champions of all time, but he won it at a very young age. He's been there. He's done that. He's already. So I think he really is playing with a chip on his shoulder to try to prove that he can be the reason that another team gets to that mountaintop. And yeah, bro, just to see where Curry's at, the injuries, man. That's another thing I have in my notes. But I think that with the deteriorating roster around them and kind of the older guys that they, Draymond, Stephon Curry, Jimmy Butler, like all those guys are older. If they get hurt, there goes the season. And so I think they're starting to realize the value in trying to trade Pods or Kuminga, just trying to figure out what they can do and see who's kind of biting the fishing hook. So I'm excited to see where this ends up. I'm assuming he will be traded before, obviously, the deadline of the summer. But, we had some summer league games go on too as well. So that is starting to happen. But, yeah, I think it'll probably happen during the summer league. But I think the Warriors are in prime position to kind of capitalize on that value. And I think it's because he's proven, again, that he can provide that, especially in times where the Warriors looked like they were in disarray without Curry or Butler. And so I think Kuminga filled those shoes really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always just been with him just being able to have that opportunity. I feel like you said, you brought up earlier whenever you were just talking about him, but whenever he is able to be off the leash a little bit, and they give him like the ability to just be able to go out and play freely, he's been great. Like you said, he's one of the better forwards we have in this league, and it's just he hasn't been able to get a lot of run. There's some games he was getting DMPs and not even seeing the court when he has the potential to be great. So it's just, like you said, it's super exciting because I think that is probably one of their better trading, or one of their best assets that they have on the team. And he's a younger guy anyway, so like you said, there's going to be a lot of teams that are looking for a player of his ability. So yeah, I'm super interested to see what they'll be able to get for him. I feel like because the market's just so messed up now that you're able to get 4 first-round picks for McCall Bridges, and then you don't get any for Luka. So it's like, where does he fit in that line? So it's just it's gonna be interesting. Like you said, I feel like he's definitely gonna get traded before the summer deadline, and hopefully he's gonna be able to go to a team where he could show his abilities and put his name out there for everyone to know. So exciting for the Warriors for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think he probably is their best asset as of now. Probably carries the most trade value just because of his age. And again, yeah, if they want to start retooling this roster, they've got to look into really what they can get from their younger guys. Because at the end of the day, I think they've struck out on some of their draft picks. And I'll be honest, the Wiseman, they could have taken LaMelo Ball, right? Probably should have. It's definitely one of those situations where you got to take best available, for sure. Even if it's not a fit right now.
Right.
I think that's where you got in trouble with that, because having LaMelo Ball would be a completely different story. Him and Curry would be unreal. Even with, well, sorry for that, bro. Like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, even having, with him and Curry, that would have been crazy. But yeah, they haven't been able to draft well. I think Kuminga was one of their better draft picks, and they got to look to move off of him, bro. So I think it's an interesting situation to be in, because they're one of the, I think they might be one of the older teams. I think they're like top 5 oldest teams in the NBA right now. So
yeah,
they just got to look to retool this, the roster. and make it a little bit younger, because I think they've struck out on some of the younger guys. And Andrew Wiggins left, and he's a lot younger than, or not a lot, but younger than Jimmy Butler. And so they've definitely made some decisions that have impacted their future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, man.
Definitely. Yeah, but you ready to take a deep dive into this Cavaliers offseason file, man?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, bro. Cause yeah, that's the cake of this episode. But yeah, man. Way we do it on this show, we do the offseason files. We go through all 30 NBA teams. We like to start it off with the three franchise players that we know that they can build around. You know, CJ and I kind of like to give you guys some background into what's going on with the team. Obviously, for Cleveland, they're in an interesting spot, man. They're in the second apron currently, and I think that's a dangerous place to be, especially for the output that they've gotten. So I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper. But let's start it off, man. We got none other than Donovan Mitchell. This is probably the number one player that they're trying to build around right now. Signed a contract extension, I think, through 2026, 2027. So he's got a couple more years, but I think it was 3 years, 150. So if I'm looking at my numbers right, it's an expensive contract. I think it's worth it. Me and CJ both know he's been the franchise player. He's been the hope of Cleveland, giving them a lot of opportunities. One of the we talked about it on the show actually, but he actually has one of the highest career playoff scoring averages in NBA history. A playoff performer, he's known for that. I think Donovan Mitchell's clearly the number one player that they've been building around. But it's interesting, you know, as he approaches getting into his pure prime, and pure prime meaning, you know, the last of his years of his prime.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland has failed to put a roster around him that can win an NBA championship, and I think that's going to speak volumes, kind of on their balance sheet and the way that they've made some decisions here. Donovan Mitchell is by no means a bad player. I think he's super valuable to Cleveland, and obviously what they did last season and winning those 64 games, kind of a testament to how great he really was, you know, taking a back seat to the scoring duties, really focusing in on being a better defender. But, you know, signing that extension in July I think was a bit premeditated.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, you can think about the thinking here. You're on a streak. You're winning the most games that you've ever won in franchise history, pretty much. You have a franchise player you've been building around, you've been waiting for this moment. You might have jumped the gun a bit and signed over a bigger contract than you needed to. Obviously, you wanted to lock him in for longer, but I don't think they've produced the output to really say that having Donovan Mitchell on the roster is the best thing. I have some thoughts on that, and I think there's potential to trade Donovan Mitchell, not this next season, but this season after that. I think especially if this next coming season doesn't work, and I think that's kind of the big bomb that I had in my notes is if they want to really retool their balance sheet, rework it. Again, like when you're approaching the second apron, which means you're approaching $190 million collectively throughout your roster, and that's for annual salary, right? So if you add up all the guys on your roster, they're getting paid more than you'd be in the second apron. And I'll go into some details a little bit about that later, but the reason why signing that extension for Donovan Mitchell was so important for the Cavs is it was signaling to him and obviously the organization that he's the future. And I think that's up in the air, is he? Because the output should be a championship, especially for that number. And I think it's interesting, you know, kind of him being the number one player. He's, you know, starting to get into his pure prime, like I said, and we'll see where that goes. But currently, he is the franchise player that I feel like, and CJ probably feels like that Cleveland's building around. And these next two guys are obviously the up and coming ones, and probably the ones that they're more invested in at the moment. But we'll roll right into Darius Garland, the second player on our list, and again, just a floor general with elite playmaking skills. Had an eye injury 2 years ago that really hurt him in his development. This last season had a renaissance. Just his assist numbers were great. He really led that team, bro, especially for how old that he is. Really commanded the position and took a lot of pressure off Donovan Mitchell, their franchise superstar. And Darius Garland is signed to a 5-year, I think it's $200 million right now, which is a high number again for a player like that who's I don't know why that keeps happening. Sorry. Who's again in a spot that you could say he's in a weird spot because he's going to essentially be handed the keys to the organization. He doesn't have them yet because he's still waiting behind their all-star Donovan Mitchell. Now, that's interesting because I feel like Darius Garland is their probably main focus going forward. Like if you were to ask to the Cleveland front office who's more important, Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell, they'll probably say Darius Garland. But for right now, I know the focus is probably Donovan Mitchell. So that's why I say he's kind of in a weird situation.
Yeah.
Hasn't necessarily had the keys to the organization, you could say, yet. But I think once he does get those, you're going to see the type of player that he becomes. And I think he's really only scratching the surface currently for what he's capable of doing. For me, the number is worth it. I think it's viable at his age. The 5-year deal for $200 million, I think, is worth it. I think he's played into that contract. He hasn't had the best playoff performances, which again I think is a separator between him and Donovan Mitchell right now. But I think Darius Garland, that guy to make them go, and he's been a really good point guard for them. And I know he's been one of their best draft picks in recent memory, and I know him on their roster and kind of, like I said a few minutes ago, just being that floor general, playmaker, kind of basketball savant that honestly not a lot of players in the NBA can really command. Darius Garland probably has also one of the best handles in the NBA, and definitely one of the best point guards for sure. So shout out DG. I know Cleveland's excited to build around him, and I know that's kind of a little look into their future. But this next guy, bro, is none other than Evan Mobley on another really big contract. But I think I wanted to talk about his season last year, winning defensive MVP, first team all defensive team. The step that he took on the offensive end was unbelievable, and I think it signals to the number 5-year, 270. Now, he is one of the most expensive players in the NBA for a reason, his two-way ability. And I think that's what makes him so special. The Cleveland's in an interesting spot, man. They really do have 3 potential franchise players that they could choose to build around, and Evan Mobley them, and he's the most valuable player on Cleveland's roster, you could say, financial-wise. But I think he still has some room to grow when gets that. I think this is his team. I think he overtakes Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland as kind of being their centerpiece, and I think he's extremely worth it. I think he showed you guys kind of last season what he could do, and I think it was just because Kenny just really unlocked his ability and what he could do on the offensive end. He said, "Bro, go score a bucket." I know you saw him against the Thunder, going against Hartenstein and driving to the lane and be. That's what they need more from Evan Mobley. It's not his defense, right? Like we know he was a guy. He's been that his entire career since his rookie season, but that this past season, I think the reason they won so many games is because of what he was doing on the offensive end. So that's kind of our 3 main guys here when we paint a picture of where Cleveland's at. They're like, since LeBron James, it's funny we were talking about him, God forbid they get him again, but since his departure, right, they've kind of been in purgatory, you could say, and it's hiding behind success. 64 wins, they're reaching the playoffs. They haven't gotten past the second round, and I think that's a really big problem, especially for having those 3 guys to build around. So kind of moving into their cap situation.
Yeah.
As you guys saw and heard probably as I went through the numbers a little bit with those 3 guys, that's the majority of their cap that they have available. So a lot of these other players have much cheaper deals. Cleveland's deep into the second apron, luxury tax territory, and I think that's concerning. They had a few moves. I know you saw the Ty Jerome letting him walk. I think that was bound to happen, bro.
Yeah, it had to.
Obviously, bro. in an NBA landscape like this, like that's kind of just what happens whenever you have too expensive of a roster. You got to let certain guys go. I think that's what happened there. They also traded Okoro. They got Lonzo Ball. Similar money. Doesn't really change their books too much, but the second apron is one of the most dangerous places you can be for a team that doesn't win in the playoffs. And so they're paying for this roster right now that gets it done in the regular season, which is bravo. Again, no slight to Cleveland's amazing season they had last year, but what does that really translate to? This is the lights off episode, but like the lights are off in Cleveland. They're looking for brightness. Like I said, LeBron James, the departure, they haven't had a lot of success, and I think it's kind of dangerous territory to be in that luxury tax situation, bro. And I think, kind of going into 2025, 26, they're projected to exceed that 190 number, like I was talking about, to put them in that second apron. And whenever teams are above that luxury tax, they use their right to use their mid-level exception, which kind of helps you sign veteran players for cheaper, right? Guys who are free agents who aren't going to get paid a ton of money. You can get them on a 1 year, 2 year deal for $8 million. That's kind of what a mid-level exception deal looks like. They lose their ability to take back more salary than they're giving out. So whenever a team has a healthy balance sheet, aka you're under the luxury tax, you can trade for a player who makes more money than the player that you traded. Now, whenever you do that, you take on more money on your books because the player you traded for is more expensive. Pick up what I'm putting down, CJ. You can nod your. I see you for the audience, right? You know what I'm saying,
I know what you're
right?
talking about.
Yes, sir. The next thing that you kind of lose your privilege, you could say, whenever you're in the luxury tax, the sign and trade ability, right? So this is really important for whenever teams are trying to move money around. We've seen a few sign and trades in the NBA. These things happen in the NBA, right? They're always happening, and it's because teams are trying to shift their books. They want to take money off in certain places. Signing and trading a guy can be. The reason you do that is to move money around. So you sign a guy to trade him. That's because you get him on that roster to absorb the contract, which is called essentially you start paying the guy. And then you can trade him. You can move him because now he's on the books, right? So that's cool. What this means for the Cavaliers, though, is they have a limited roster movement. They're not able to make a lot of roster decisions that other teams are able to. They aren't able to make any big free agent signings. So whenever we're looking at the free agent pool, we're looking at who's the player that can go here. We're talking about, can they trade for LeBron James? They have to make that money work, right? Like they can't just do that. Whereas the Charlotte Hornets, a team with a healthier balance sheet, they can just make a trade. And it's because they can afford the money. They also can pay a massive tax bill. Now, you pay a certain percentage. I don't have this number in front of me, and I don't want to bore you guys with logic, but you pay a certain percentage for every dollar that you're over the tax. And that's, whenever we say over the tax, that's being within the first or second apron. The first apron, like I said, is at that lower number. I think it's 184. That second apron is whenever you exceed 190. And I think that is a big deal because whenever you're paying more money to the NBA for potential guys that you could be getting on your roster, like they're going to be paying the NBA to have the roster that they have instead of using the money that they could use on the roster. So that's a massive issue for the Cavs. Now, I think it's really important to mention here, the Cavs have been hiding behind their success. Their balance sheet says that they should be more successful than they currently are. So, CJ, I would like to ask you this question. Do you think they are in a good spot?
No, not for their contracts, at least. I think with obviously these players are great, the three that you just said, and I think they deserve that money. But like you said, if they're not able to be successful in the playoffs and contend for a championship with the amount of money that they're paying for them, I would say no.
Right. So we have a couple strategic improvements that I think the Cavaliers can make to help improve that sentiment that you just gave. It's interesting because I think they have the two big lineup. I'll start this off in my notes. We've talked about the two big lineup on this pod. It's been good. For the Cavaliers, at times it's been really good. But I will say they need to prioritize getting a shooting big man. I think Jared Allen has been kind of a roadblock for Evan Mobley's growth.
Yeah.
And I think they must be able to modernize their offense. And when I say that, the two big lineup is very old school. That's very throwing it back to the 90s. And I think Jared Allen is the piece that they really need to think about moving here. Obviously, he's close to again, you could say he's one of the instrumental parts to the Cavaliers roster for sure. But whenever we look at their balance sheet, it really says that they need to make changes. And I think it starts with prioritizing a shooting big man. They need to, again, improve their perimeter spacing and their 3-point volume. They were at the bottom of the league for 3-point attempts last season. Oddly enough, doesn't make sense. They shot one of the highest percentages, which means you just have to shoot more. They were blazing last season in the first half of the year from three, I think shooting over 40%. I think their attempts were under 40 a game, which, again, that's for the modern NBA, 36, 37 threes. Like, to me, if you're shooting above 40%, that means you need to get up more. I think they really need to prioritize getting some shooters. I think having Lonzo around is definitely better than Okoro, right? I think Lonzo Ball's a better shooter, so that's already a good start. But I think, again, improving their perimeter spacing, their 3-point volume is super important. They just ranked near bottom of the league in attempts, which is odd because their percentage was so high. And I think they also need to figure out a way, lastly, is to duck the second apron. Yeah. Now, I've reserved a few minutes to talk about this. Getting out of the second apron is no easy task. I'm going to try to kind of burger it down here so people can chew on it. I think the second apron was implemented by the CBA to penalize teams for roster hacking. Yep. Roster hacking is when a team tries to spend their way to winning an NBA championship. CJ, you've seen how this has turned out, but for our audience watching, for people who may not know, the Brooklyn Nets is probably the best example that me and CJ can give of this. Yep. You try to spend your way to an NBA championship, and that just doesn't work. The CBA has now implemented some rules to penalize teams who are doing that. Again, it's not just we're not going to be able to give any accounting tricks per se, but I think this is hard, actionable things that they can do. They've already gotten rid of Ty Jerome. They already let him walk. I think, Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, what are they doing on the roster, really?
Right.
I think those guys you might be able to move off of, right? They also have a Chuma Okike's contract that needs to be absorbed. I think those three dudes, if you're able to move or try to turn into some trade assets, not take back a bunch of money. Again, get a player, get a second round pick. Get a player, get a second round pick. You have to take back the players to fill out the roster, but you take back a little bit less money. I think that's where that starts. You got to cut some of the fat. And when I say some of the fat, it's the players that you're paying that you probably shouldn't be, as much money as you're really giving out here. I think Dean Wade's on a $6.6 million deal. Chuma's is 4.5. They got rid of Niang as well. We've spoken about him, but he's he's no longer on their roster too, which I think was another good start. But kind of those three guys from balance sheet kind of screamed what are they doing on the roster? I think that's kind of an easy step to really do that there. I've talked about this already on the pod for the last couple minutes, but Jared Allen, I think moving that $20 million contract is the second thing that I would do, and probably what CJ would do, just from a roster standpoint. Where are you really going with that, right? The two big lineup we spoke about for a couple minutes, but it's good, but it's not feasible for what you guys are trying to do, especially since you don't have a shooting big. The reason it works on OKC is why, CJ?
Because we have a big that can shoot.
Right. So the fact that you guys really don't, Evan Mobley hasn't been able to develop into that yet. You need to look into moving Jared Allen. And again, it's kind of cutting some of the fat. I talked 30 seconds ago, but Jared Allen's contract is too big for his services. The lights are too bright, you could say. Right. By doing this, though, it's essential that they avoid deep, really tax penalties. Again, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, they're paying the NBA, for every dollar that they're over the luxury, and that could be used to build their roster. And so I think making some of their moves surrounding Jared Allen and some of those other guys, that the Chuma Okeke, Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, that's where you can start to shift your balance sheet to get under the luxury tax. Now, this would put them just under, but if they were able to make some roster moves that, again, they added the players, right, to fill out the roster, but they took back a little less money, I think that would give them an opportunity to not have to pay some of these penalties and keep their core intact. Like I mentioned, we talked about some of the players that they're building around, and that's why we start kind of with that topic, right, is so people can get a background of kind of where the team is going for the future. But Cleveland, yeah, they've hit on some draft picks. I think we've talked about they have one of the best developmental kind of centers in the league, and yeah, man, I think I truly they're in a really interesting spot. But yeah, I'll break it down again. They need to redefine their offensive identity. They need to kind of, when I say that, the two big lineup, they need to improve their perimeter shooting, their 3-point spacing. I brought this up. They did not shoot a lot of threes, which is interesting. They were blazing. And then thirdly is they need to duck that second apron. And we kind of just walked through those three strategic improvements. So that's kind of the offseason five. This one was like really deep. I know, CJ was kind of like blah, 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 but I had to ask him some questions to keep him engaged.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I know he knows the information, but
yeah.
like I got to give it to y'all straight.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, yeah, you explained it perfectly because, I told Z, I was like, yeah, it's good to explain this for the audience because this is a side, obviously the business side of the league that a lot of casual viewers or even people that don't really even watch it aren't going to know about, because they'll see that they have, these great players on their team, but don't really know the finances of it and what is the downside of having these players that y'all are great, good players, all-star players, all NBA type players, but it comes with a fee with it. It's
exactly.
It's not as easy as just you can sign all these players for a huge amount of your cap space and you won't be penalized for it. No, like you said, it was a perfect example with the Nets. They try to do that, and the league was like, yeah, we can't just let people try to buy a championship. So
right,
you explained it perfectly, bro. I didn't really have to explain much because you were the one taking over and you did a great job.
I don't want the audience to think I'm like hogging the convo, but I know he knows it. He knows it. So definitely, that insight's good too. Just you can't buy your way to a championship. I think we touched on it a little earlier, but teams trying to do that, and we just saw the Thunder win an NBA championship cold. So I think it kind of signals to other teams like, hey, we don't need to be in the second apron. Like that's not where we want to be, especially if it's not translating to winning. To winning. You got to duck that. I think that's probably the most important thing, even though that was third on the list. Just trying to figure out a way to get out of the apron.
Yeah.
Moving Okeke and Merrill and Dean Wade starts there. Getting rid of Allen, trying to trade him, get back some assets for him starts there. I think that's really how they can even improve too. I think you get a shooting big man or you try to go wing and you let Evan Mobley kind of fill out and develop into the potential.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it, Hall of Famer that he could be. I mean, we might be looking at a double-double machine, defensive beast who could win multiple defensive, MVPs. So I think they're in an interesting spot. First, second apron team we've talked about. The Celtics ducked it because some of their moves that they've already made, so they took a page out of their book. But, yeah, Cleveland. The Cavs, man.
Yeah.
Unfortunate season last year, just in the playoffs, that is, just coming off of that high. And, they have to look to really rework their roster. I think it's a lot of balance sheet things that they can do a little bit better. And we're not accountants, but we can look at their contracts for sure. That's public information.
Oh yeah. We could definitely figure out some things that they could do to help, help the roster.
100p.
Yes, sir.
100%, brother. Well, yes, sir. You got anything else for the people?
No, man, this is a good one. You know, like I said, got to
Lights off episode.
lights off episode. Yeah, yeah, got to learn a little more of the business of the league. You know, and it's a huge part of it. Obviously, it's how they're able to sign players and stuff. So this is great. You know, for everyone that didn't know about it, now you do. So that those are the things you get whenever you listen to Three Man Weave. So I don't have much to say, bro.
Of
Appreciate you for joining me in
course,
today's conversation and you know
short and
nothing
sweet.
else from me, man. Is there anything from you that you like to let the audience know?
Nah, bro. Just hopefully, Bron, like we started off with on the pod, but just hopefully he doesn't get traded to some weird team. We brought up San Antonio. I think with what Houston has been doing too, bro, it's interesting, man. I don't know. Like, there's some teams who definitely want to take in a veteran player who is a
Yep.
Hall of Famer. Jimmy Butler just happened with the Warriors
Yep.
too. A little older at the tail end of their career. So I know teams will be willing to bite. But yeah, man, other than that, just excited to see what happens with Kuminga. We talked about the CBA a little bit today, so that was cool. But yeah, I know that bores some people out, man. So, we won't do it every time. Some of these teams that are in the second
It's
apron, bro, it's
yeah,
like you're
we
saying,
need
it's
to
important to talk
sometimes,
about.
bro. Yeah, for sure. It's really how their off season's gonna go. Like these are the type of things that they're talking about right now. So yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
much needed
100%, bro.
sometimes, you know.
For sure,
Yes, sir.
100%. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if y'all liked and enjoyed this episode of Three Man Weave, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time, man. Peace. Three man, three
Peace,
man.
three man.